Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have another special guest today. We have Deena McKay, and she hails from Cleveland, Ohio, just like Bone Thugs and Harmony. And she is the founder and the host of another podcast called Black Tech Unplugged. And she's also a senior Scrum Master at Kraft Heinz. In terms of schooling, she has her BS in Information Systems from Canisius College, which is a private college in Buffalo, and then her Master of Science in Information Systems Management from Loyola University, Chicago.
Some other things that you might want to know about Black Tech Unplugged is that the podcast focuses on highlighting Black people who innovate and work in the tech industry. Deena started Black Tech Unplugged as a way for us to see people who look like us in the tech industry. And she also wanted to share some tips and tricks and some advice for those of us who might be interested in parlaying our experiences into the tech world. That's actually kind of how we ended up meeting Deena.
Yep.
We
Yes.
actually heard her during a live recording session, which is a dream of ours, more to come. And we were just like, she's so cool, we gotta connect. And somehow she chose me to interview. I still don't know how that happened, how she interviewed me and not Kyla, but that's another story for another day. She is a public speaker, a trainer, a major foodie, and she's up in the Chicago area now, so she's around all the foods. So let's jump into this interview.
Yay.
Hi, Deena.
Let's do it.
Hi, Deena.
Hello, happy to be here.
We're excited.
We're happy to have you. I feel
Yes.
like the listeners miss a whole lot of funny conversation in the moments before we start recording. So I already know we've been laughing before we got on. So I already know it's going to be a good show.
No, you got behind the scenes. I missed it. Man, this is what happens.
Just chatting,
when you're
people
late.
be peopling. We're not going to
was
date
late
the
today.
podcast, but we are around a holiday right now, and people are
Yes.
working like it ain't no holiday going on. Where they do that at?
Mhm.
Apparently all over the United States.
Right.
Listen,
East Coast and Midwest at least.
true, very true. I'm like, I don't know anyone who's on the West Coast. That's
I
well,
do, and
that
I
has
know they're
reported
working.
back.
Yeah,
Oh well, maybe they enjoy that part.
I guess.
Mm-mm.
But Deena, we want to hear so much about your role as a Scrum Master as well as Black Tech Unplugged. But before we get there, we want to just know how you got into the tech business or how you just got interested in being in tech. Growing up in Cleveland, did you have any influences or, people who pushed you in that direction?
So, growing up, I didn't really know tech was a thing. Like, I didn't know, hey, go make tech your career. And so, to give you a little background, when I initially went to college, I thought I was going to be an athletic trainer. Yes, my little 5'5", like small self thought I was going to be athletically training all these like big athletes. And then I went through the first semester of college and I had to tape somebody's ashy foot. And I was like, you know what? This is not for me.
Wait a minute.
Like,
It was the ash for you. It was the ash.
Wait, was it the
Mhm,
foot itself or
I think it was the ash.
it was the whole experience?
it was an experience I never knew I knew after I had it that I never wanted it again. So I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna be touching like these people that I don't know like that. I'm not gonna be touching their like body parts. So what else can I do? Because this is not for me. Like, no, this is a no for me.
Hilarious.
And
And that didn't dawn on you before you jumped into the role, into this.
no, I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, so growing up, I was like a 3-sport athlete. So I was like, I wanted to do something athletically inclined. So I'm thinking like that way instead of like what is a real career, because why would I think with like, common sense? I was just trying to do what I was doing. Like I was 18, you're just doing whatever. You trying everything, right?
Right.
And so, but when I was in high school, so I went to an all girls Catholic school. When I was in high school, there was a nun who taught like computer classes. And she would always be like, you know, you're really good at this. And I'm like, okay, girl. Like, hey, Sister Ann. Like, yeah, okay, girl.
Thank you, Sister Mary,
like,
Computer Science. I appreciate it.
So she would make me take all these computer classes. And most of the time, to be honest, I was the only person in the class because no one else was doing this. Like, no one else was doing tech stuff. And I never really saw it as a career, but she was having me do all this stuff. Like I said, I'm the only one in the class, so obviously she's doing this class for me, so to speak.
Wow.
And so after I get through the ashy foot, I'm like, okay, where do I go next? Because this ain't it. And my family kept saying like, well, you know, you've always been like into the latest tech gadgets and the technology. Why don't you look for something there? And I'm like, okay, so, but like, what does that mean? Like, I don't want to be a programmer. I just felt like programming and looking at code all day wasn't for me. Like, I still like to talk to people. I still like to like, you know, be involved, but like not be programmer involved. Right. And so someone recommended information systems, which is like computers and business. So with that major, I got to take some programming classes. So now I can say like, especially when you're working with people and you're like, what's taking you so long? You can kind of gauge like, yo, you really just playing around versus like, oh, you're actually doing some work. But then I got the business side. So how to manage people, how to manage something if you want to be an entrepreneur. And so that was like the sweet spot for me of like business, computers, and like the world became my oyster after that. But to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just experimenting like everyone else. But I was lucky I had the space and the opportunity and the time to experiment.
That's really cool. So, but I'm glad
and
that
not be around any more ashy feet.
No more ashy feet.
No, because woo, I could still picture that. Like just telling that story, I could picture that to this day. Like I have that picture in my mind, and I'm just like, oh, I can't believe I had to do this. And it was just like, oh, wrap their.
Oh
they're like, wrap this ankle. I'm like, I'm like, and it was like me and another person. And I was like, you do it first. Like get that warmed up for me, and then I'll come
I'll
back
wrap
around.
it after you wrapped it, and then.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
But I'm glad that your family, you know, knew that much about you to be like, you know what, that didn't work out, but remember this other interest that you have versus you having to, you know, start at the drawing board and try to figure out what in the world, you know, you were interested in.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is they never were in tech. Like my mom did like, and it's sad because I should know like kind of what she used to do. Like she worked with mortgages and like selling houses and like the real estate part. I wasn't into that either. They tried that. That wasn't for me. And then my aunt was doing like something similar. And my grandma worked in like, she did eyeglasses for her whole career. And I'm like, and then there's me who's in tech. They had no idea like really what tech was. Like they have more of an inkling now because I'm in it, but it's not like they saw someone do it. So it's not like I was following in someone's footsteps. They were kind of like, we know you like this thing. Let's help you kind of navigate and get there.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was going to ask something, but my brain completely blanked out. So anyways, I think it's really interesting that you ended up at like that's what it was, at a small private college in Buffalo. Like what led to that?
That was a journey in itself. To be honest, I don't remember like how I found out about the college. I'm going to probably go out on a limb and say they recruited me type of situation. But originally, I wanted to stay in Ohio. I wanted to go to Cincinnati and Xavier in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. I was like adamant, I really want to go here. And then as I'm getting my acceptance letter, so I was accepted at Xavier, but it was basically came down to the money. So at Canisius, it was like, we are giving you, there was a great program for minority students when I was there. They gave you a book stipend every quarter so that you would have money for your books. They gave you a scholarship, and all you had to do was keep a certain GPA. And I was like, my mom was like, that's where you're going. Like, I don't know if you think you're going to this other school because you basically don't have to pay anything here. That's where you're going to go. but it all was just like happenstance. They were sending, you know, you get back in the day, you used to get flyers and pamphlets, booklets, whatever you call them. And they would just started randomly sending it to me. And also when it was time for college, there was more like colleges would visit your actual high school.
Yeah.
And so I think they like came to the high school and was like, they were trying to recruit more people out of Ohio. But so all of it was happenstance.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But the support was there too. So were you part of any like clubs around tech or any like project teams or anything like that?
So in undergrad, going into it, I didn't know everything I know today. Let me put it that way. So everything that I yell at my listeners on the podcast of like making the connections, building that network, I wasn't doing that. So I wasn't a part of any of the organizations. But also, to be honest, when I was in my classes, I was the only person that looked like me in a lot of these classes. So I didn't have someone to say like, hey, you guys want to even be like a study group or like you want to hang out and learn cool tech stuff. I didn't have that. So it was basically, I was kind of on this island alone, unless I made friends who didn't look like me, which I did within my major. So it was harder for me. And I don't recall there being many groups of like people who actually wanted to talk tech. I think at that time, at least where I went to undergrad, it was like you were a nerd or a geek if you wanted to do that. And everyone was still running from that title and that label. So it was like, oh, okay. So I guess we won't talk about it.
Jeez. There's like literally like 2 people who have come on this podcast and said they were not a nerd.
But what is the negative connotation around nerd?
I didn't say anything was negative about it. I'm just saying that, you know, that's
true.
They didn't, those 2 people, 3 people just did not associate with that term. Everyone else did, though.
Everybody else was like, yes.
They were like, I'm a nerd. I'm a proud nerd. I'm a blurred. And I'm like, okay, cool.
So you went to college. You had a good time. You got out, even though you were sort of isolated. You got your degree. So then you made the decision to go to graduate school. So what was going on there? Did you want to be more isolated or?
So I just needed a little bit more time to figure out what I actually wanted to do in tech, because as we know, there's so many careers. Right. And also during that time, the economy wasn't looking so hot. So it was like, okay, I can continue my education and go to grad school and, you know, see what happens. Like what I might learn more, which for me, grad school is the best thing because I did learn a ton more. I got to learn more to what my niche is. And so I was like, okay, might as well apply. Got in at Loyola, Chicago, and best 2 years of my life to learn things. But I will admit, I was still isolated. I don't think there was isolated in my program. There was no other person that looked like me, but I made a ton of friends just like, because again, that business part comes into play. There were a lot more people that look like us in the business department. So I did get to meet and connect with really wonderful people at the department. And plus the teachers at Loyola were very, very good.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Did you do any research along with your master's, or is it purely course-based?
So how would you define research? And the reason that I asked the question that way is, so I did a lot of different internships when I was at grad school, which for me was research because that helped me narrow down. Listen, I learned a lot. I did everything from like a quality assurance analyst, so basically doing QA work. I did business analyst. I did, what was the other one that I did? Business analyst, and there was another one. So I got, application developer. Yes, I was an application developer intern, like nowhere near that these days. But it helped me understand the responsibilities and characteristics you need for each role, and then also decide for myself, do I actually want to do this? So technically I did research. It was just a little bit more hands-on.
Got it. No, that's good because it helps you to figure out what your interest area is.
I think it's funny that like Kyla's asking this question because we're like super excited about people who want to do research, but it's really not common that people actually do it, especially with a master's degree program, right? Like it's more common that you just pursue more coursework and get like that deeper level knowledge in your discipline, which is not really offered to you as an undergraduate student. Like I feel like undergrad is just like, let's check these boxes and make sure they have like surface level knowledge.
Like these are the fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals. That's a good word for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's definitely fundamental. It's fun. Well, let me add a caveat. It's fundamental unless you as a person are curious and you dive deeper.
Yeah.
So undergrad is all like they give you the like, here's the little basics. Now, if you want to do something with that, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And in undergrad, most of the time you're like, no, I'm good with this. And then you go on,
like,
right?
This is enough. I have 4 other classes. I can only handle this.
Yeah, right. I think that's a good point, Deena, because you can take, like, as an undergraduate student, you can actually enroll in graduate level courses at the end, right? Like, if you've got prerequisites done, if you really wanted to dive deeper, you technically could, but it's not a requirement.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of like dual enrollment as a high school kid.
Basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. So you finished grad school and you said, I have narrowed down exactly what I want to do in life. And
look at her face. Her face is like, absolutely.
Kind of.
And
I mean, for the moment.
I'm saying that a little sarcastically, but tell us about like your path to becoming a Scrum Master.
Yeah, so after graduate school, I went into consulting, which was fine because you're like, it was like I was young and learning things, and with consulting, it's like you're drinking from a fire hose, right? Like all of this information is coming. But it's like when you're new to the world of working and then you're kind of thrown in consulting, like you are literally thrown into the deep end and it's like sink or swim.
Wow.
And with consulting, I was doing basically work as like, so my QA role came into play because as a consultant, if people don't know, you are literally thrown into any and everything. Literally. You could be a project manager one day and then the next day they need you to be doing QA stuff, and then the following week they might need you to look at some code. Like you are literally thrown into anything because they've paid these companies to do certain work, and like you have to fill in whatever hat you can get. And so went into consulting, started off actually on my first project doing a QA role, which is like I wasn't really signed up for this, but okay.
Can you explain to our listeners who don't know what QA is? Just a brief,
Oh, yes. Yes, I know I said that a couple times. So QA is quality assurance analyst or quality assurance. So basically think of like when you create a product, you have to make sure that it meets certain standards. So QA is basically from a software development perspective is I'm making sure that the system works the way that we said it was going to work. So it's a lot of test cases. And as a QA, you would have to write the test cases. So you would say, this is what I want to happen, like when I do a certain action within the system, and then the expected result is this. And so I was making sure that everything works. Now, sometimes when you do a QA role, it could be 5 things. Maybe it's a small program. Usually when you are QA and it's a software that you're developing, it's like hundreds of steps. So think hundreds of test cases that you're writing, then another hundreds of expected results that you're writing. Plus you actually have to go back and test it and make sure it works along with someone else. And also keep in mind, any bugs that come up, you have to go back to the team and like let them know, and also kind of like guide them to fix that functionality. So that's what I was doing from a consulting role perspective. So
is load testing also in that
Yes, so load testing is also in that. So I didn't have to do that part. So I never had to do any of the automated pieces of QA.
Okay.
I was always focused on the functionality of like making sure that the software functioned in that way. So basically everything I was doing was more on the manual side.
Got it.
But now there's a lot of like, please, if you're going to go into QA, look into the automated side. And like you said, do the load testing, make sure that you know all of that good stuff, because that's what people are more so doing, especially as technology is advancing.
Right. I had an internship where I was on a team where we did the load testing part, and I was like, wow, I get to break the computer and talk about how it breaks.
But that's
great.
like, I was going to say, that's the fun in it, is like, let me see if I can make this not work how it's supposed to. Because if you find that one spot, you're like the hero of the team. You're like, they're like, oh, okay, because this could have been a vulnerability and all of a sudden we would have been hacked.
Exactly.
I was just about to say, whenever like I thought of hackathons before, like this is what I thought about, right? Like not like, oh, there's a problem and we want to solve it. It was more like, how do I break into this or break this, right?
Yeah.
Like
you know what? Now that you bring that up, I'm like hackathons. Yeah, they were misusing that
backwards.
term a
bit.
Yeah.
Like break the thing.
Yeah.
Right. But to just like high level go through my journey, starting consulting, I did that for like for about 4 years out of college. Then I went and did like a fintech job. So I did that for 4.5 years. And I was doing enterprise architecture. So what that means is I basically was keeping track of every single application, software, and anything that people built within the company. I was keeping track of all that information in one system.
Oh my God.
And I was also, so my team would also be collaborating in different ways, but I was the person who owned this system that kept track of all that information. I was like, I don't know how y'all got me here, but this is different, because I never saw enterprise architecture as something where my career path went. Right. I always liked being on the functional side. So after I did that, I had a chance while I was doing enterprise architecture to do the project management of a project. We were switching my current system to a new system, and they were like, well, we need someone to lead this project. So I volunteered. I was like, I'll do it. And so that's when I started getting more back into the project management and Scrum Master side of things. So that project was very hard for me. That was a time period where I learned a lot about how to work in corporate. I'll put it that way. And we can come back and elaborate on that. Okay. But that's when I finally got back into project management. And then I was like, okay, that Agile and Scrum is becoming a thing. I'm going to get certified. So one of my girls was teaching a class, and they were like, come to this training class, you'll get certified after. So I did. And then after that, I was just like, I'm going to do the Scrum Master thing. Like, I like this. I like Agile. Why would I give this up? And I've been doing it ever since.
So wait, what is Agile? What is Scrum? for our listeners.
Well, Kyla. No.
So let's start with Agile, because everyone thinks Agile is just tech. It does not have to be just tech. But true. Agile is just a methodology or a process of basically you're working on things in iteration. And so you still have a plan. So similar to what in tech we call waterfall. In waterfall, you would plan everything out, all your requirements, have a document, and work on everything all at one time. And then, so you would be going from one stage to the next. So write all your requirements. Okay, we sign off on those. Next thing, we're going to build everything. Okay, we're going to sign off on those, and then you're going to test. Agile, completely different. Each sprint, so a sprint is 2 weeks. Each sprint, you agree to build, you basically have requirements for a sprint. You build that, you show it and have QA during that sprint at the end of the sprint, and then you build on. So you're building in iterations. A lot different than waterfall, and I will say a lot better because Pretty much. Because, like, you're waiting all the way to the end to get some
Right.
feedback. What
And
if
it
people
assumes
don't
that
like your
everything's
stuff?
perfect. Right. And assumes that everything is perfect from the beginning to the
And
end.
we,
And you'll never need to revisit your requirements. Or you never need to revisit your design. You know, it's dumb.
and that's just not life. I think we all know at this point of life, perfect is not real. Like,
Right.
perfection does not exist. So imagine, I can't imagine, like, I've done some waterfall projects, but if it was like a huge project, waterfalls
No.
just does not work
Makes no
anymore.
sense.
You
Because you
need
get to the end
agile.
and you don't even know if the person is, I mean, agile is very much like, you know, fail fast, fail often. It's
Yes,
like figure
yes.
out what's not working quickly versus you get all the way to the end and show the person they're like, well, I didn't ask for this. What is this?
Exactly. And so that's why I love agile. Like, everything is, I know people hate the term fast paced, but agile is a faster pace because it's 2 weeks, but you're getting feedback all the time.
Right.
You're in a constant feedback loop. People need that constant feedback loop.
Exactly.
And so that's why I really appreciate agile. And with being a scrum master, so a lot of people think a scrum master is like a project manager who, you know, make sure that you do all the work within that 2 week sprint. Not exactly what we do. So the first thing as a scrum master, the most important thing is that you're actually adhering to agile principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that the team is actually following through on what you're supposed to do from an agile perspective, having ceremonies, all that kind of thing. Now we still are
the power of
the
the Black
ceremony.
Panther. We stripped away.
Not the Black Panther movie. Did you just watch that? Is that where that came from?
No. I had sugar at lunch today, so.
Wow.
Okay. No, I forgot the question. Okay, the question was what?
What's a ceremony? I'm here. Okay. Kyla may be somewhere else. She's in Wakanda right now.
I'm here. I am here.
I can't.
I'm still here.
I've never heard of the ceremonies part.
Okay, we got disconnected because Kyla ceremonially kicked her out. Talk about
Really?
ceremonies.
Don't do me. Don't do me.
Look, it's not my fault that you were over here asking all the questions about being a Scrum Master and somehow took a trip to Wakanda, like in your mind and your imaginary space. But anyways.
But now we're back from Wakanda.
Yes, we are back. We are back.
Okay, so the question was, what is a ceremony?
Okay, so a ceremony, think of it as at certain parts of the sprint, you have to have specific meetings. And so those meetings are what is referred to as a ceremony. So for instance, on the daily, you always have to have a daily stand-up. So every day you check in, it should only be 15 minutes. This is not like a rundown of what you did yesterday, but more so an idea of, okay, you're working on this particular item. How long is it going to actually take for you to complete it? And so you have several ceremonies. There's the daily stand-up. There's something called backlog refinement. That's when you look at the stories for the next sprint and make sure that they're prepared. So when you do actually kick off the next sprint, you're not like, I don't know what I'm doing. That's what the backlog refinement is for. So preparation. You also have a demo. So after every 2 weeks, you do a demo for your main stakeholders to get that feedback. Are you going in the right direction? Are you going in the wrong direction? Do they have some suggestions? All of that's talked about in the demo. You also have sprint planning. That's at the beginning, between the end of the last sprint and the beginning of the new one. It's usually the start of the new one. In sprint planning, you basically just say, hey, here's what we're working on for the next sprint. These are the stories that we're going to do. Here's how long each of these stories are going to take. And we have everything we need in order to be successful. And so those are the main ceremonies. I feel like I'm missing one, but basically you have these same repetitive meetings that you have within a 2 week time span. And so that's what ceremonies are.
Cool.
So sprint planning, daily stand-up, like a sprint review, and like a retrospect.
Yes. I can't forget a retrospective. Everybody.
Yeah,
everybody's got to talk about like what they liked and some highlights. You know, you got to also talk about what you didn't like a little bit, but in a respectful way.
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. Interesting. So Kyla, no, not not you've ingested an herb and fight me.
I mean, that could be one day. That could be a sprint one day. I'm just saying. Don't put a
Oh
box
goodness.
around
Okay.
the capabilities.
So that became what you are like excited about, interested in, what you come to
Yes.
work for every day. What types
Yes.
of like
And
projects do you use this on?
okay, so good question. So like I said, you don't have to just use this with tech. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could use it for like you all doing the podcast. You can have
Oh, no.
so sprints don't have to be 2 weeks, but you could
We
say
ain't
like,
having
let's
no
say if you
daily
did
stand
like
up meeting. I'm gonna tell you that.
but that's the whole point of being agile is like it's literally flexible or agile. You don't have to do these daily stand-ups every day. It depends on your team.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so maybe you do a daily stand-up like once a week. And
Maybe a
then
text.
let's say that okay, it could be a text. Because like, okay, like for instance, during the holidays, you think my team want to meet up every day? Sometimes we're
No.
flexible and
true.
we're like, okay, send your message in like Teams, and you know, then we'll know your progress there. So you have to
Mhm.
be flexible because it's agile. So be agile.
Mm.
I like it. I like it.
But you could literally use it for anything. Like I've seen people use agile to like fix their lives. Like yes, Ayana, you could use agile and
Interesting.
like do these things. So literally for anything. Now, to get more specific, Jeremy, to your question, for me, what I have done for projects, like I'm trying to think of something that's been really unique. We've used it for like a lot of times, especially from a consulting perspective, I've used it just to like teach a consulting team how to build their product, like anything they want to build. And I've done it for one that was really interesting was with it was a company that uses solar panels, and they wanted to like be the best solar panel company ever. And so like using that to like adjust how they're going to do their marketing stream and like get new clients, and putting that process in for them, and also teaching them and coaching them so that they could use agile in a more efficient manner. So, and also to actually get things done, because without agile they didn't really know, like they didn't have a process, so that helped them have a process. So you can literally use it whenever.
I'm still
Kyla
trying to figure out how to fix your life with agile. I don't even know.
Well, okay. Wait. I have thoughts. So you
Okay.
mentioned, Kyla, that there's one of our colleagues that uses something similar in their lab group meetings.
Yeah.
And like I could see adopting some of these things to just like weekly check in really fast, lightning talk style. Like you got 2 minutes. Tell me what's going on with your project.
That's basically
what went
my
well?
lab group meeting.
What went poorly? What are you gonna do to address it? And or what are you gonna do next? Right?
Yeah.
And then like everybody has that process, and then they can talk about like in more depth like some of the details of their project. That could be really cool to see.
That's literally my lab group meeting. It's like, what did you do?
We're gonna hire Deena as the consultant for my lab group.
Listen, I do consulting on the side still.
Yeah.
Well, and just like caveat a little bit. So with like daily stand up, like you were saying, those questions, whenever I'm teaching someone, like teaching a team or a group how to use it for daily stand up, there's like 3 basic questions you start with to get people in the right mindset.
Tell us.
And it's like, what did you do yesterday for the work that you haven't completed? What are you going to do today? And then, are there any blockers, or do you need help with the work that you're doing so that we can get you to the finish line? Because a lot of this work that you have slated for 2 weeks shouldn't really take you, like one thing shouldn't take you through the 2 weeks. You should be doing a lot of stuff. And so you want to make sure you're like pushing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably where the whole sprint plan is like really imperative, that you do a good job with the planning piece first.
And
so
for the
exactly.
It helps you to know like what are people belaboring that doesn't need to be belabored. It's like, okay, you need a week to do this one thing that actually we already have code for, and you can just press a button. Or like, there's random stuff, like, because I actually have that format from my lab group meetings. I'm like, these are the only questions I'm interested in. What did you do last week? What you about to do? What do you need to help you, get through whatever you're getting through? And then there'll be like,
look at me learning stuff on the podcast. Y'all, this is
Okay.
helpful.
Okay, I'm going to
That's
take
really
you one
helpful.
step further too. That will be a little bit helpful, just based on,
Okay.
I think, what you both said. So when you're doing sprint planning, each story that people are working on has a certain amount of points. So let's say something is 2 points. Those points usually represent the amount of effort. So if you have a 2-point story and someone's taking 7 days, you're like, hold up, wait a minute, like, what's going on? Like,
too long.
You are out of the timeline. Like, you are out of the time box. You said this was gonna take like 3 days, and we on day 7.
Yeah.
So it's like that way you can keep people in check too, which I appreciate. And it's like a nice way of checking. You don't have to tell someone like, hey, like, bro, you ain't really doing this work. You could just be like, hey,
this isn't
I noticed
check
you're a little
yourself before you
behind.
wreck yourself. This
right.
is
Like, what do you need to help? Like, what resources can I help you get to get this going quicker?
Exactly. So I do like that aspect too.
I like it. I like it a lot.
And so for this, you didn't get your master's unless you went through some type of certification, right?
Yes. So for Scrum Master, there's a couple different ways you can get in. And the reason I say it like that is because, so for me, what I did SAFE Scrum Master. That's the certification I started with. But SAFE is a particular methodology. Now, not to scare anyone, it's not that much different than everything else that's going on, but it's just, they've deemed themselves this separate methodology. There's a couple like minor differences, but that's how I got in. But if you're looking to become a Scrum Master, look into the CSM, which is Certified Scrum Master, and that is offered by 2 different companies. So you could do your CSM or your PSM. Caveat, because before people run out and go take these classes, PSM is a little bit harder than the CSM. CSM is through Scrum Alliance. PSM is going to be a little bit harder. I forget which. I have a CSM as well, but PSM is through another organization, scrum.org. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. And so those are 2 that I recommend. But also as a Scrum Master, I recommend you get PO certified. So that's product owner, Scrum Master, and product owner work hand in hand together. And I can go into more detail about how they work hand in hand. But you want to know what your right hand is doing. So why not get certified and also, kind of be an expert on that as well.
Tell us more. Tell us about the product owner.
Yes. So the product owner is literally like the Scrum Master is the product owner's right hand. Product owner is the person that's driving everything. They're gathering requirements. They're making sure that you know what you're working on next, all of that good stuff. And so the product owner is basically feeding the requirements to the team, making sure that when the team does complete a story, that story is basically up to standard. So they're saying, okay, actually, you've done all this work. We can move this to done. So the product owner is like leading the charge. They're basically the team lead. Think of it that way. And the Scrum Master is supporting them. Making sure that you're actually running the ceremonies properly, that you're like staying within the time box. And to be honest, each company is different. So where you go, how much responsibility the Scrum Master versus the product owner has will be different. And I've experienced that from my consulting side to now being back in-house tech.
Interesting. So go ahead, Kyla.
No, I was gonna say it's like almost like the Scrum Master is like the operations person, but like the PO is like the executive. Like, I own this thing, I need to make sure it's correct, and the Scrum Master is like,
yes,
I am the make sure of the processes person.
Right. I know this is bad to say, but this is what I say. The Scrum Master is like the babysitter. They're like, is everyone okay? Are we knowing how to do these things? Are we doing it properly? Do you have agile questions?
Right.
And then the product owner is like, is this done or not?
Right.
Like,
No,
we
no, no.
own this,
That's-
and I need to make sure that we hit our deadlines. Is this
Right.
done?
Mm.
So it's like a different. They're both have leadership qualities, but it's two different types of leadership.
No, that makes sense.
Very, very interesting.
But you can't really do one without the other, because usually a product owner, while they have a lot of knowledge technically, they can give you all the requirements. They are making sure the team has deadlines and, you know, has a roadmap. A product owner does not always have the agile knowledge. They have that technical expertise. So that's where the Scrum Master comes in, and they're like, well, you could do it a little bit differently and do it this way, the agile way. Let's start doing this. And that's where the coaching piece comes in.
Okay.
So you are a senior Scrum Master at Kraft Heinz. So I'm assuming you use all of these things pretty much day to day now in the role that you have.
Yes.
Are there, I guess you probably can't tell us about, you know, all the things that you're working on, but like, I don't think of like, my first thought is a ketchup company, but you know, like a condiment manufacturing space. Like, this is not to disparage ketchup. It is my favorite condiment. Okay. It's very versatile. Anyways, from today, in case you're wondering, my question is, like, when I think of condiments, I don't think of the use of technology at the level that, you know, when I think of like an Apple, an Intel, a Facebook, like my brain does not compute as like those things being connected. So how do you leverage like the technical side of what you do, even, you know, though it's connected to business? Like, how do you leverage that in this role?
Yes. Okay. So we're going to take this from two different perspectives. Let's start with the food piece in itself.
Yeah.
So from an innovation standpoint, when you are working at like a consumer good type of company, they're making new goods all the time, right? You're not just selling the same thing over and over. So you can use an agile methodology to come up with these new concepts. And you need agile in order to say, like, okay, here's how we're going to release something. Are we going to release it at this time? You have to have a plan. You still have to have a roadmap. You still have to have direction. You still have to have someone who's leading the charge of saying, like, okay, if we're making this particular product, this is how we're going to make it, and this is what it's going to look like. So you still use agile from that side of the house of like innovation, coming up with new products, making sure that things are released on time. I put on time in air quotes because, you know, it's what you planned. Now, from the other side of the house is you're selling product, right? But you need numbers and insights into how you're selling products.
Right.
Like for instance, let's use your Apple example. If you're only selling 2 apples, but you thought you were going to sell 200 apples, what are you going to do with that? Like, why are you even selling apples? People probably just don't like apples from you. But you might want to go in a different direction. But you need those numbers and you need that insight to actually make an informed decision. And so that's the flip side of also using agile, is using the numbers and the data. And then even getting into what we always a lot of data, but also getting into what we're all going to see in the future, AI and machine learning. So predictive models. You also want that side. A lot of companies are using that. And so that's another way that you're implementing this information within the work that you're doing. And so we use agile to start doing that and planning ahead, and also using the data that we have to make informed decisions. So there's definitely ways that this works, but it's different than your mind averagely thinks, because if you're not doing it or seeing it on a day-to-day, like from a teaching perspective, like you're not really seeing that. You don't have to really play with numbers or data. So you're like, oh, I just, go buy stuff.
Right.
Right. It suddenly shows up at my door. No,
I just do things and they're successful.
I definitely understand that. I just know that like a lot of people who will listen will be like, this girl works at a ketchup company, like, and it's like, it's way deeper than that. Like manufacturing is like incredibly complex. And now that they are integrating a lot of these systems to have like these models that people don't understand, or like the machine, even just the machinery and like its efficiency and how it, what it's able to accomplish. I think we need more people who are interested in the intersections of like where technology can be used for anything.
Yeah.
Whether it's food or agriculture or, I don't know, maybe one day civil engineering, with materials will do a thing. Right now we just focus on like traffic and sustainability and stuff.
And
that's a good point though, around civil engineering.
I don't know if I want to be on a rapidly prototype bridge where it's like, okay, stand on this.
I know that I do not want to. Right.
No.
Yeah. No. Well,
but cool. I think also your story also shows how you don't have to be at a tech company to have a tech role. Like there are many tech opportunities at places that aren't considered tech companies. Cast a wide net, I guess.
Yes, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that even took a long time for me to step out of that box. And I think, too, we see it a lot with people saying, like, they want to work at, like, FANG companies, the Facebooks, Amazons, all that good stuff. And that's cool and great for y'all, but tech is literally everywhere. I say for y'all because I never worked at one. I mean, I'm not... I would love the opportunity just to try it, see what happens, but tech is literally everywhere. You could work at a bank and be in the tech department. You could work, like I said, consumer goods and be in the tech department. And I think it's wise to just like you said, Kayla, like cast your net wide, see what opportunities are out there and what actually speaks to you, and also where you can learn. That's such a key piece of like, we keep saying at the big companies, what are we actually learning? You can learn at so many of these different companies, trying different things. So cast your net wide.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I'm over here like ketchup, not ketchup.
We have more than ketchup. We got cream cheese, ketchup.
They made mayo ketchup
and then
recently.
Oh yeah, I
released that. And it was a very big deal. It's a serious thing.
I will admit I like mayo and ketchup for my fries, but I don't think I would want the like combination in a container. Like I want them separate to dip.
You want to be able to control your ratio of ketchup to mayo
proportions.
Yes.
There was a lot of user testing with that one, I'm sure. What is the optimal ratio?
And now we're big into our like plant-based. So everyone's being a little health conscious, and sometimes you don't want those kind of like meat byproducts or those kind of things. So there's a lot of new products that will be coming out soon, I think.
Yeah, and Kraft also has lots of snacks too, right? So they have like that whole side of what they do. So anyway,
but I understand like ketchup. Well, and then it reminded me when we were talking about Wakanda. So we did have like when Black Panther came out, we had the Wakanda, or I should say Black Panther craft macaroni. So it was like Black Panther shapes, but like mac and cheese.
That's cool.
So I know everyone likes the mac and cheese, so look for that.
Look for that. Find it in stores. Support your Deenas of the world.
Are you allowed to tell us are you allowed to tell us all of the products that you're working on?
I can't, unfortunately.
That's fine. Okay.
But I'm like, I guess like as they come out, maybe I'll put them on my Instagram so you can follow me.
You're like, product placement. I never said anything, but
oh my goodness. I have a story for you later, not on the podcast. Okay, so I'm really excited that we learned all of these different things about like your job, but you have a podcast, and I would love for us to talk about your podcast on our podcast.
Yes, let's do it. So Black Tech Unplugged has been around for it's 2022, so about 5 years now. which
Oh,
sounds crazy to say out loud.
Yay!
Thank you. All inspired from my own experiences. Remember, we already talked about how I was the only one in undergrad, in grad school. I went to another, when I was in a particular role at a job, I was the only one. And remember, I told you I learned a lot about being in corporate?
Yeah.
Well, that pushed me to create the podcast because I'm like, okay, I had like some crazy situations happen. And all those situations, I'm like asking people for advice because I didn't know how to navigate some of that. Like having a manager that wasn't present, but like trying to not helping my career and things like that. So like, how do I navigate that? What do I do? And so I'm like gathering all this information. And I'm like, I'm sure other people need this just as badly as I do. So how can I spread it to like a mass audience? I'll just try a podcast. So I've been
scaling.
And so I was just like, let me do this podcast. So I started it and I haven't stopped because there's so many stories to tell. And there's so many people who, like, your parents can only tell you so much. And if you don't have the support system, at least you got the podcast.
Exactly. And there are people who they don't just say, oh, this is the theory behind what's happening. No, this is my lived experience. And I can definitely, give you some stories. So do you have any like favorite moments or favorite topics from your podcast looking back, over the past 5 years?
That is a hard question. I feel like just the collective energy of it all has been my favorite moment of like learning so many different people's stories. And then also seeing like none of us knew about this tech thing. Nobody was like, I was a techie in high school and did all this tech stuff, and then I'm just tech. It's like, no, I just fell into this.
Yeah.
And to hear that is one part interesting and then a little part disappointing. So interesting is because we all found our way. We all found our footing. Like, we're out here, we're doing amazing things, and that is cool. The disappointment part comes in with how can we get people involved with tech more like earlier on?
Yeah.
And how can we get our kids to know that tech is a career path, like when they're kids, and being interested in that and not being afraid? Because what I've learned is a lot of times we look at people like us, look at tech, and we're like, ooh, I'm afraid. I don't want to be a coder. Like, I don't want to do this. But that's not, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I think what I like about your show is like in contrast to like what we do where we focus primarily on like women and young girls, like you're really focusing on everybody Black. And I think of like that quote from Issa where it's like, I'm just here for everybody Black. It's like she's over here interviewing everybody Black. And if you want to know how to get into tech, like you can hear all different types of careers that people have pursued and really cool stories in a shorter format than ours, because your episodes are a little bit shorter than ours. I think we be talking over here.
We be talking.
Especially Kyla.
Yeah, but like,
you know what?
Kyla, you know.
But sometimes it just be like that.
I know once you get into a good story, it's like, I need to know all the details.
Exactly. And it's like, if you have, like, you're talking and you have a question, like, I need to know the answer, like, right now while you're telling the story.
Yes. I mean, I get it. I mean, I will talk to people all day long if I could, because extreme extrovertism. But I do definitely think that, like, there's an art to being able to like condense something down, like help people. I don't know if it's like synthesize like the main point. Like, let's help you get there. And I think you're really great at doing that. When we heard you, of course. When we heard you, we were at Black Tech Week in Miami.
Yep.
Yes.
Which was fire. I'm gonna need to go back to one of those. Anyways, you were interviewing someone from NBC Universal, and she was like or is that right?
Yeah.
And she's like a vice president or something like that. I was just like, And then later on, we had this conversation about like, hey, like, what would you like to do with this support that we have for Black women and girls? And we were just like, do a podcast. I think that's a thing that we could do. And so your podcast inspired our podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
And
I'm glad it did, because
you helped answer a lot of questions for us too, which I think was really helpful in the very beginning.
Yeah, just
listen, we all got to
it's
support each
going.
other. Everyone wants to be like gatekeepers. No.
Right.
Stop gatekeeping and share the knowledge. You'll be okay. There's enough room at the table for everybody.
Exactly.
Or we'll build our own table. Get
Hello.
that.
And who says it needs to be a table? Maybe it needs to be an ottoman. Who knows?
A chair. Oh goodness. Okay.
Can we pause for a second, sir?
All right, push the button.
All right. So Deena, you've done a lot with your podcast. Like, are there any fun opportunities that have, been open to you because of your podcast?
Yeah, so I would say the two things that have been like the fun or more opportunities that have come were just like public speaking. So getting to speak about all the things I like building teams and Scrum and Agile. So I really enjoy that because that's what I'm passionate about. And then also, I think I'll say it this way, one of my favorite moments from doing the podcast so far was when I did a live podcast. Ooh, that was back before the pandemic, but it was so much fun. And it was in Chicago, and just being able to actually see the people who listen to the podcast, because you interact with people online all day, but to see them and like put a name to a like face and name together is like it feels different. Like it feels like a little bit more rewarding. So definitely can't wait to get back out and start connecting with the people who listen to the podcast and continuing to make that what word am I looking for? To make those connections, because we all need each other in the tech space.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, we're working on a live recording situation, which is gonna.
Well, if you ever need help, I can help you on that.
We will definitely be asking. Right. I'm about
Deena
to
get flued out.
Jeremy about to sing. We're gonna figure out something that keep people.
I am not gonna sing for the people. They are not ready.
I don't know. Do you all watch Housewives at all?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I saw the Reasonably Shady.
Yeah. So please, please. So call for help. I will be more than happy to help you.
We will definitely ask you offline some because we are not trying to do that. It was.
I think what's good like about like Kyla and I working together is like we've done so much together at this point, like from planning conferences with like 400 plus people to like small group meetings, traveling. Like we're actually like co-workers and friends. So we've done a lot of the things together that I think lend itself to us like planning events.
Yeah.
Currently planning a ski trip.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Okay.
No money for a little bit.
Gotta have the fun.
Planning
business,
is Oh, for sure. But planning it can take you out sometimes if you're not careful. So always have the balance.
Absolutely. So Deena, where can people listen to the podcast, and also where can they just find out more about you on social media?
Yeah, so podcast, you could go to BlackTechUnplugged.com. Also there you can find all of the social media links, but Black Tech Unplugged, the podcast itself is on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so you can follow on all of those platforms. And then to actually listen to the podcast itself, besides going to BlackTechUnplugged.com, any podcast platform, Spotify, SoundCloud, all that. You can find everything there. For me, I'm on Instagram is most likely the best place to go. And that's Deena_McKay. And then also Twitter, same thing, Deena_McKay. So yeah, you can follow me there.
Thank you so much for having us on. And just as a quick teaser, we're going to be on her podcast. So you heard all of the ways to listen. So go ahead and hear us over there.
Okay.
Yes. We call it crossover season. So
Yes,
it was
it is
about time that we did a
crossover
crossover.
Yes.
Yay. Thank you so much, Deena, for helping us figure all of this out. It's been really interesting, whole process. But I'm glad that we were able to get you on today.
Yes, me too. Happy to be here. And if anyone has questions about Agile Scrum, hit me up. I'm more than happy to help at all times.